Good morning or afternoon, Cal Young. I hope you had a successful testing morning and are ready for something a little different. I am thankful that the math department has offered to give up some of their math curriculum time to go over some curriculum or policies about a topic that's very important for student safety at school and in the community. And that is something called Aaron's Law. And we will go over that through video like we did the emergency drills a few weeks ago, because it's a challenging topic to discuss. And this way, your teachers can get the same information and you can all get the same information from me. And that way it will be a little easier for everyone to know that they're getting the correct information and not feel as though it's a challenge to talk about. So I'm going to do a quick share screen and we will get going. So it says Safety Training Day, and that's because this is copied from a video or a set of slides that I edited. But I did change the date there. It says Monday 9th, 2022, which is correct. And it also says what our PBIS slogan is: be respectful, be responsible, be safe. Of course, this fits under being safe. We need to make sure that students are educated about abuse so that they can not only think through their own personal experiences and whether there's been any potential abuse in their histories, but also for their peers. And what are some signs and symptoms of abuse, or what are some things you might listen for to make sure that your peers are as safe as possible? And how would you go about talking to others about that? So today we'll have about 15 or 20 minutes as an introduction. This will be part one. And then tomorrow we'll have about 15 or 20 minutes as a part two, all of it in math class. So what is Aaron's Law? Erin Merrin is a woman who was abused as a child. She has advocated and helped create legislation to ensure that all students are educated about child abuse and what to do if it is happening to them or someone they know. I'll say a little bit more about Erin in a minute, but why? Each year, over 6 million reports are made about abuse and or neglect of children. And we'll talk about what those words could mean in just a moment. 1 in 3 students will experience emotional, physical, or sexual abuse by a dating partner. Many cases go unreported, so there are even more than this. For many, there are, of course, deep and lasting effects of abuse into adulthood, and that can look like many things that some of this curriculum will discuss. And with help, some survivors can live quality lives, and they can heal, and they can be healthy and productive adults. Of course, that takes work and it takes support from others. Children have the right to feel safe and free from the threat of harm. So here's a little video about Erin, and I'm going to skip some of the story of abuse because it's very emotional. But basically, she and a sibling were abused physically by a relative that was older than them. And then she goes into where I'm going to start, which is how she went about creating this law. So I'm going to hit play, and I might have to fast forward a little bit.
At 13 years old, with anger and rage. So we broke our silence, our abuse ended, reclaimed our voice, and that was the first step in moving forward and healing our lives. Because I had my parents' support and believing my sister and I wanted other people to realize that there is support for them out there as well. Looking back on my childhood, I learned tornado drills, bus drills, fire drills. Yet there was nothing on how to speak up and tell if you're being abused. So I created Erin's Law in my home state of Illinois.
Oh, this money. We made $2, actually $5. Stop, please. Just goes, okay. Plus my mom bought this fresh lemonade just to make it look cute.
Back in 2010, I was working my full-time master's level job as a counselor working with youth. I quit my job, tried to figure out a way of how I was going to explain to people that, I'm going to speak about educating kids on the prevention of abuse, because my own state lawmaker said, Erin, we don't talk about that in society. They will never teach this in school. And I made it my mission not just to get this passed in Illinois. I made it a mission to travel to all 50 states, testifying to lawmakers on the importance on this. And I tell these lawmakers I'm not going away. This is something that everyone should stand behind. Erin's Law requires every year child sexual abuse to be taught in public schools. So once a year, students must be informed on personal body safety, on how to speak up and tell the differences between safe and unsafe touch, safe and unsafe secrets, and give kids these voice and educate our educators on warning signs to look for. How to properly handle when a child discloses abuse. And there are multiple stories as a result of Erin's Law being passed. We need to end the stigma and shame around this subject. Legislators, parents, teachers, they need to wake up and realize that this is going on. You all know somebody that this has happened to. I really want parents to see the importance behind this, and I want kids to reclaim their voice and be able to break their silence and end their suffering. That is my mission in life.
So a sad story, but one that leads to a powerful change and into powerful action from someone who's very brave, Erin Merrin. So what is child abuse and neglect? The Federal Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, CAPTA, defines child abuse and neglect as, at a minimum, any recent act or failure to act on the part of a parent or caretaker which results in death or serious physical or emotional harm, sexual abuse or exploitation, or an act or failure to act which presents an imminent risk of serious harm. So you hear some of what neglect and or abuse might be in that definition, if you have some familiarity with what neglect or abuse means. So some of the definitions, if you're not sure, neglect is failure to care for properly, lack of care or attention. You're neglecting someone. You've probably heard that before. And of course, if you're neglecting, if you're not as an adult taking care of who you're supposed to care for, then that can lead to injury for that person. Abuse is to treat a person or an animal with cruelty or violence, especially if repeated over time. There can be physical abuse, which is, of course, an intentional physical act of harm. But there's a lot of emotional abuse too. Behavior from one person that causes another person emotional harm, like anxiety or depression or fear, or of course, sexual abuse. Undesired or unwanted sexual touches or exploitation of another person. So I'm going to start another little video here, and I'm going to play part of it, and it talks a little bit about some facts about child abuse and neglect. I may have to toy around with it a little bit to get it to the right place. Hold on just a moment.
While federal legislation sets minimum standards, each state is civil statutes which guide with your state's definitions. The statistics on child abuse are alarming. Approximately 1,400 children die of abuse and neglect each year. More than 80% of these children were abused by their parents. Child abuse rates are similar for females and males, but females are sexually abused more frequently. The cause of child abuse is difficult to determine. It can be caused by a specific sociological or psychological factor, or a complex combination of such factors. Contributing factors may include economic stresses, lack of social support, substance abuse, lack of parenting skills, history of abuse, depression, low frustration tolerance, and/or unrealistic expectations. Some forms of abuse are more difficult to detect than others. Certain physical, behavioral, and environmental indicators can singly or collectively suggest a child may be in need of help. As a member of the school community, it is important for you to be able to recognize signs of abuse so that you can report them as the law requires. Often, we can learn something about a child's home life if we just pay attention to what's being said around us. For instance, school personnel should pay attention to information they hear about students' pets. If animal abuse is occurring in a family, child abuse may also be occurring. School staff.
So it refers a little bit to the law and the legal need for people to report. Of course, that's for mandatory reporters or people who work for the state of Oregon. And students don't work for the state of Oregon. So you are not mandatory reporters, but the employees around you are. Of course, you are also very caring people about your peers and about children that you are part of the school community with. So you, of course, want to report also. And so listening to what your peers are saying about their home conditions is really important. And you need to consider whether it breaks that threshold of, emotional or physical or sexual abuse. There's a difference, of course, between just not liking what our adults around us say, if they don't let us do something we want to do, and it being something that's actually good for you. And then, of course, there are times when those adults might say or do things that aren't good for you. So listen to your friends about what they're saying and whether things seem just to be a bit off. And in that case, you may want to report. How would you get help? Well, there's various ways. There is the Oregon Department of Health Services, or DHS for short, and they take phone calls and take information about young people, and sometimes they build case files about young people and the types of things that may be happening in their family, and then they work to support that family and that student. There's, of course, the Eugene and Springfield Police Departments, and their phone numbers are there. And of course, you can always dial 911 if you have serious concern and it looks like an imminent danger is going to happen. And then school safety support. For our region, we have, of course, the administrators, the principal and assistant principal. We have counselors. We even have some other school safety personnel that work between buildings. There's a person named Marcus, for example, that comes to our building some. And of course, there's the other trusted adults that you have in a school community, whether they be teachers or educational assistants, or even people who work in the lunchroom, or friends, people who you trust to make a report about supporting someone. Well, that is where I'm going to end things today. Thank you for listening. I know this is a hard topic. Maybe your teacher will have some follow-up questions, or just take your questions so that we can try to answer them in the future. I hope you have a good day. Thank you for listening.